Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating mission for you today.
Yeah, I'm genuinely excited to get into this one.
So, I want you to picture a 10,000-ton commercial freight network just moving across the continent.
Just massive scale.
Right. And when you visualize the sheer scale of an operation like that, you probably think the most powerful engine driving that massive machine is made of, diesel and steel.
And perfectly calculated logistics grids.
Exactly. It feels rigid. It feels like this giant, predictable math equation where everything just comes down to tonnage, fuel efficiency, and GPS tracking.
It's actually not.
No, it's not. The actual engine driving all of that efficiency isn't made of steel at all. It's made of trust.
Which is honestly the absolute definition of a counterintuitive reality.
Yeah, totally.
Because you can have the most advanced, heavily financed fleet on the planet, right? Equipped with cutting-edge telemetry and the smartest routing software money can buy.
But if the human element is fractured,
The whole thing just stops. The drivers, the dispatchers, the maintenance crews, if they aren't completely in sync, that entire multi-million-dollar system simply grinds to a halt.
and that's exactly what we're exploring today. We are looking at a really deep analysis from Greystride regarding transport operations.
And the source material lays out this very stark truth. In a heavy-duty, mechanics-driven industry that is totally obsessed with hard metrics, the actual secret weapons are soft skills.
Specifically, trust and accountability.
Exactly.
And to really understand why trust and accountability aren't just, fluffy HR buzzwords, but absolute life or death operational necessities, we first have to wrap our heads around the unique nature of transport operations.
Right, because it's a highly decentralized environment.
Think about your own team for a second. If you manage people in an office, you can just walk down the hall and see what they're doing.
You have visual confirmation.
Yeah, but in transport, you have trucks moving across vast distances. The drivers are operating entirely independently.
It's like trying to conduct a symphony where every musician is in a completely different city.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
If they aren't completely in sync, small squeaks turn into massive expensive failures. It's like being an air traffic controller, but your radar only works if the pilots actually decide to turn their transponders on.
And talk to you.
Right. If they don't trust you, you're flying blind.
And that decentralized reality is exactly why things unravel so quickly.
Yeah, the Greystride data actually provides a super granular look at what an operational breakdown really looks like when that synchronization is absent.
It usually starts with communication, right?
It starts with communication completely severing. Drivers and management retreat into their respective silos.
They stop talking.
Exactly. And as a result, these small, highly fixable operational issues get deliberately hidden.
Like what kind of issues?
Like a minor delay at a loading dock or strange vibration in the steering column, even a piece of compliance paperwork that was filed incorrectly.
People just bury it.
They bury it. And they stay buried until they inevitably erupt into massive, catastrophic, and incredibly expensive failures.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Sure.
Because in an industry that is so obsessed with hardcore metrics like fuel costs, tire wear, tight delivery windows, isn't focusing on feelings and trust a bit of a luxury?
Oh,
I mean, I'm putting myself in the shoes of a fleet owner. Sure, it's nice if everyone gets along, but doesn't the bottom line dictate everything else? Doesn't focusing on trust just distract from the hard numbers?
that right there is the exact trap many companies fall into.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's why they fail to scale.
Really?
Yeah, because trust isn't a feeling in this context. It is a tangible, highly sensitive operational mechanism.
Operational mechanism.
Think of it as an early warning system. When people feel safe, they raise concerns before those concerns become expensive disasters.
Oh, I see.
Let's look at a concrete scenario from the source. Suppose a driver is halfway through a route and hits unexpected construction. If that driver trusts their manager, they call in immediately. They say, look, I'm staring at a 2-hour delay.
And then the manager can actually do something about it.
Exactly. The manager can reroute other trucks, inform the customer, adjust the dock schedule. They save the account.
Right, because the information flowed freely.
But if that driver doesn't trust the manager, if they know they're just going to be screamed at or blamed for something totally out of their control,
They just hide the delay.
they hide it. They try to make up the time by driving recklessly, or they just stay completely silent.
Wow. And then what happens?
The customer finds out when the truck simply doesn't show up. The warehouse staff is just sitting around doing nothing, which is costing you hourly wages.
And the customer is furious.
Furious. And the company potentially loses a massive multi-year contract, all because of a lack of trust.
So trust is the actual pipeline that allows critical information to flow.
Yes. Without it, you are managing a business through the rearview mirror. You're just constantly reacting to yesterday's hidden problems.
You're spending all your time firefighting instead of growing the business.
Exactly.
So if a lack of trust causes this exhausting, expensive cycle of firefighting, the natural next step is figuring out exactly how leadership builds that trust.
Right.
And Greystride's analysis gives a very clear, highly actionable answer to that. One word: consistency.
Because unpredictable leadership is the fastest way to destroy morale.
What's fascinating here is the specific environment where this theory was pressure tested in the source material.
Oh, the South African context.
Yeah, let's really dig into that for a second because the context is everything. The data draws heavily on the experiences of transport drivers operating in South Africa.
And we aren't just talking about a smooth drive down a well-paved interstate here.
No, not at all. You have incredibly long hauls across vast, isolated stretches of road.
You're dealing with extreme weather.
Right, and poorly maintained provincial infrastructure where, a pothole can literally swallow a truck tire.
Not to mention the highly challenging security environments.
Like the very real risk of cargo hijackings, the physical and mental toll on these drivers is immense.
They are operating in a landscape of pure chaos.
And it's like being a deep-sea diver.
How so?
Well, you're down there in the dark under immense pressure. You need to know that the person on the surface managing your oxygen is absolutely reliable.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
They can't just be changing the rules on a whim. If the external environment is that chaotic, the internal relationship with the company has to be bedrock.
It has to be. When you are out there facing physical risks and grueling hours, unpredictability from your boss is the absolute last thing you need.
Yeah, if you call dispatch for help, and one day they're supportive.
But the next day, they're punitive and dismissive.
Right. Your confidence in leadership just evaporates.
It makes perfect sense. If the road is chaos, home base has to be solid rock.
Otherwise, you aren't just annoying your staff, you are actively threatening their livelihood and their safety.
Precisely. And the source lays out a blueprint for providing that stability. It's actually quite straightforward, though it does require immense discipline.
What does it look like in practice?
Well, strong transport leaders create a predictable environment by communicating expectations with absolute clarity.
Okay, clarity.
Yes, they apply the rules fairly across the entire organization, meaning the top-performing driver is held to the exact same safety standards as the newest hire.
No playing favorites.
Exactly. They follow through on their commitments. If a manager promises a driver they'll be home for the weekend, they move heaven and earth to make that happen.
And they maintain respect.
Even when correcting poor performance.
Mm-hmm.
In those intense environments, when leadership demonstrates that kind of unshakable consistency, teams respond with fierce loyalty.
Because the mental burden of guessing what management wants is completely removed. People just know where they stand.
Right.
So we've built this utopia of trust where everyone feels safe, the communication is flowing, rules are fair.
Sounds great.
It does. But safety without direction, without targets, is just a country club. If you only have trust, people might feel very comfortable doing absolutely nothing.
Which is a very real danger.
So how do you prevent teams from just getting complacent?
This is why the source pairs trust directly with the second half of the equation, accountability.
They go hand in hand.
They are two sides of the same coin. Trust creates the environment where performance is possible, but accountability is what actually drives the performance forward.
And the source points out that the biggest enemy of accountability isn't malice, it's actually vague expectations.
Yes. When responsibilities aren't clearly defined, you get the classic corporate bystander effect.
Everyone just assumes someone else is responsible for fixing the problem.
Exactly. If the directive is just, we need to reduce fuel costs, what happens?
The dispatcher assumes the driver needs to idle less,
And the driver assumes the maintenance team needs to tune the engines better.
while the maintenance team assumes dispatch needs to plan better routes.
Right. Everyone points fingers and absolutely nothing changes.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's say a leader recognizes this and decides to eliminate the ambiguity completely.
Okay.
They step in and explicitly define every single expectation. They dictate exactly what the fuel consumption cap is per trip. They script out the exact vehicle inspection routine.
Highly detailed.
Right. But if I'm a driver who operates independently hundreds of miles away, and suddenly my manager is giving me this massive list of daily operational metrics.
You're going to feel suffocated.
Yeah, I'm going to feel like I have a babysitter. Doesn't extreme clarity run the risk of feeling like intense micromanagement?
It's a super common pushback. But the operational psychology in the source material reveals why the exact opposite is actually true.
Wait, really?
The opposite. Yeah, vague instructions are actually what lead to micromanagement.
Yeah.
Because the manager constantly has to intervene to course correct since no one knows the actual goal.
Oh, that makes sense.
Clear expectations remove that confusion, which ironically gives people way more autonomy.
How does that work with the fuel example?
Well, if a manager just says try to save fuel, they're going to be constantly watching and critiquing the driver's habits.
Hovering over them.
Right. But if the manager says the target for this specific route with this load is exactly 6.5 miles per gallon, and here's how your driving influences that number, the dynamic shifts completely.
You're just giving them the boundaries of the sandbox.
Yes. The driver no longer has to guess what management wants. They can just focus their expertise on hitting the target.
They manage their own performance within the parameters.
Exactly. And furthermore, the source notes that true accountability has to flow in every direction. It's not just for the drivers.
Right. Supervisors, dispatchers, everyone.
They must all have highly visible, measurable responsibilities tied to the overall performance. The dispatcher is accountable for route viability, the maintenance manager for vehicle uptime.
So when everyone knows their exact role, accountability isn't a forced mandate.
It simply becomes the natural byproduct of a highly coordinated system.
It's the difference between a vague criticism and a clear target.
Beautifully said.
But once you have those targets established, you still have to deal with the messy reality of human operations.
Mistakes will inevitably happen.
A truck is going to break down, a driver will miss a turn, a dispatcher miscalculates a window.
It's unavoidable.
And how a company handles those specific moments of failure determines whether they cultivate a culture of extreme ownership or a culture of paralyzing fear.
And businesses that try to enforce accountability through pressure, yelling, or punishment usually get the exact opposite result.
Because fear doesn't eliminate mistakes.
No, it just ensures those mistakes are hidden from leadership until it's far too late.
The source material has a fantastic analogy for this mechanism of fear-based management. Think about the check engine light coming on in the dashboard of a truck.
Right, a critical piece of operational intelligence.
Exactly. But if a driver knows they're going to get written up or lose their safety bonus every single time they report a mechanical issue.
They aren't going to pull over and fix it.
No. They're just going to take a piece of black electrical tape, stick it right over the light on the dashboard so they don't have to look at it, and keep driving.
Until the entire engine explodes on the highway.
Because human psychology dictates that we will always try to avoid the immediate pain of being yelled at today.
Even if it guarantees a total catastrophe tomorrow.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that psychological reality requires a massive paradigm shift for a lot of companies.
Reporting a problem early must be viewed as responsible behavior, not as a failure.
Right. If a driver calls in and says, look, I messed up, I missed the exit, and I'm going to be late, the immediate response from leadership has to be focused on solving the logistical problem.
Not punishing the honesty.
Exactly. Greystride lists very specific practical mechanics to build this kind of ownership.
Like what?
It requires implementing daily operational check-ins that are actually useful, not just status updates.
Real conversations.
Yeah. And creating highly visible escalation channels so when things go wrong, people know exactly who to call and they know that person will actually help them.
It also requires bringing people in on the business itself, right?
Right.
Sharing the performance metrics transparently.
Yes, and publicly recognizing strong performance. You have to show the dispatcher how their routing choices directly impacted the quarterly fuel savings.
You have to show the driver how their on-time delivery secured the renewal of a major client contract.
You're giving them a genuine sense of ownership over the outcome. When people understand how their gritty day-to-day actions move the needle for the entire company, they naturally take more responsibility for the results.
But there's a critical catch here.
A big one.
For any of these feedback sessions to actually work, leadership absolutely cannot remain an invisible, distant entity locked away in some corporate boardroom.
No, they have to physically bridge the gap between the executive office and the blacktop.
So let's talk about what this means in practice. We're talking about the concept of leadership visibility. The source says leaders need to get out of their emails, visit the yards, talk to the drivers in the break rooms, and sit with the dispatchers.
During the busiest hours in the day, too.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Is this just corporate theater? I mean, it's just about leaders walking around in high-vis vests, shaking a few hands to boost morale, and then running back to their spreadsheets.
If it's treated as a PR stunt, the teams will see right through it instantly.
Right.
Genuine leadership visibility serves a vital dual purpose. First, yes, it builds immense credibility.
Because they're actually showing up.
When a driver who has been wrestling a rig through a storm for 10 hours sees the operations director standing in the freezing rain at the yard, to understand a bottleneck trust accelerates dramatically.
That makes total sense.
But the second, and honestly far more important benefit, is that it helps leaders make better, more accurate operational decisions.
Because you can't effectively manage a reality you don't fully understand.
You have to see the friction for yourself.
Right. You might sit in an office wondering why drivers are constantly clocking out 20 minutes late.
But then you actually go stand in the yard.
And you realize the gate security software takes 3 minutes to process every single vehicle.
Exactly. You can't see that on a spreadsheet. You stop making policies based on an idealized mathematical model, and you start making them based on the messy reality of the ground floor.
But that raises a really important question. How do you maintain this transparency when the leader inevitably has to go back to the office?
Because you can't live in the yard 24/7.
Right. And that is where the final structural pillar comes into play. Systems.
Culture and leadership are the foundation. But you need highly capable systems to actually enforce and support accountability at scale.
We're talking about the dashboards on the screen to match the boots on the ground.
Yes. You need vehicle utilization tracking, deep fuel monitoring telemetry, digitized maintenance reporting.
But again, how do we prevent these systems from feeling like Big Brother?
It all comes down to how the systems are used in the actual conversations. These tools are crucial because they remove the emotional guesswork from performance reviews.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's look at fuel monitoring. Suppose a driver's route is suddenly showing a 15% increase in idle time.
Okay.
Without data, a manager might just call the driver and say, "Hey, you're wasting fuel, you need to drive better."
Which instantly makes the driver defensive.
Exactly. They feel attacked, and the trust is broken.
It feels like a personal accusation.
Right. But when you have transparent, objective data from a telemetry system, the psychology of the conversation completely shifts.
Because the software becomes the bad guy.
Exactly. The software is the bad guy. The manager and the driver can look at the dashboard together as a team.
And the manager can say, hey, the system is flagging a 15% idle increase on the Tuesday route. What's causing that?
Is there a new traffic pattern? Is there a mechanical issue with the cooling system making you leave the truck running?
Ah, I love that. It takes the heat entirely out of the conversation.
It does. It's no longer the manager against the driver. It's the manager and the driver working together to solve the puzzle presented by the data.
It turns a courtroom trial into a collaborative problem-solving session.
Beautifully put. And this brings us to the ultimate transformation described in the research.
Right, the big takeaway.
When a transport operation actually masters these concepts, when they build genuine trust, establish crystal clear accountability, and support it all with objective systems, they completely transform their daily reality.
They move away from that exhausting cycle of constant pressure and firefighting.
And they achieve true operational excellence. And the tangible financial benefits of that excellence are profound.
It's not just about a happier workplace, right? It's a massive competitive advantage.
Teams communicate proactively, meaning problems are solved while they're still small and cheap.
Drivers become deeply engaged, which means customer reliability skyrockets.
And in an industry that constantly bleeds money due to high staff turnover, retaining your best people, because they actually respect the leadership, is the ultimate foundation for sustainable growth.
Absolutely. And for you listening right now, this is where the rubber really meets the road.
Yeah, this applies everywhere.
Whether you are managing a fleet of hundreds of trucks across the rugged highways of South Africa, or you're leading a team of remote software engineers scattered across different time zones.
Or you're a hospital administrator trying to optimize patient flow.
Right. The mechanics of what we've discussed today are entirely universal. Clear expectations, unshakable consistency, and visible leadership that actually understands the ground floor.
And creating a culture where people are rewarded, not punished, for reporting a mistake early.
These are just the fundamental building blocks of any successful human endeavor.
Because at the end of the day, no matter what industry you're in, every single operation reflects the quality of its leadership. When trust is weak, Even the most expensive, state-of-the-art equipment will struggle to deliver results. But when trust and accountability are strong, teams can overcome almost any obstacle.
It always comes back to the people.
Always.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with something to really chew on regarding your own day-to-day.
Something to reflect on.
If you had to map out your own organization's yard right now, that specific place where the real gritty, unglamorous work actually happens, how long has it been since you walked through it?
Great question.
And more importantly, if we go back to that 18-wheeler, what hidden check engine lights might your team currently be taping over simply because they are too afraid to show you?